Greetings to our viewers on the East. I am so excited you are joining us here on LCP Community. I want to get started. Today we have John Reid, editors of the publication PD16 Perspective, to discuss his new venture, PD16 Perspective. Well, welcome, John. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, Princess. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, before we talk about PD16 Perspective, I wanted to talk about a recent article that you wrote on former Governor Ralph Northam, announcing him granted over 1,200 pardons and restoring more than 126 civil rights to Virginia over his last 4 years serving as governor. What do you see as the impact of restoring over all those civil rights to individuals convicted of a felony?
Well, absolutely. And I think it was imperative. I know that was one of the goals that the former Governor Northam wanted to do, definitely helping people be able to become members of society. And so imperative that as his tenure came to a close, that he was able to give them these opportunities, because we do know that institutional system, it unfairly discriminates against Black and brown people. And so, the majority of people who were impacted the most, who benefit from these pardons of clemency, was for those in the Black and brown communities, which means it gives an opportunity to just be citizens once again, be able to get back into society and live a normal life, and to be forgiven of past indiscretions. And so it is something, especially with this state, one of the things that really needed to change was how we, number one, the system that puts Black and brown people into the prison systems, and also something that will allow them to have lives once they get out, so that they don't have to be branded with the scarlet letter of saying, well, because of this act that I did several years ago, that it's got to stay with me the rest of my life. It gives them an opportunity for jobs, an opportunity to rent apartments, homes, and be able to hopefully get voting rights, things of that nature, which is so imperative. Because I think what has happened too often, we've seen cases, and if you watch the movie on Netflix, movie on 13th, what it does is it's still a form of institutionalized slavery. And so by granting these pardons, what it has done is said, okay, now you have a fresh start. And that is what the purpose of the prison should be, is to help to institutionalize people so that they can be prepared. But we know in many situations, that's not the case. And so I am happy with what former Governor Northam did, and be able to give them the opportunity so they can get back on the right start.
Also in that article, you wrote about the Clemency System. Can you talk about what it is and how the system streamlined that process? Our viewers may not completely understand all of this process. Can you kind of break that down a little bit for us?
Absolutely. And what people have to understand, there's this difference between clemency and a pardon. That you can be granted clemency, but it doesn't mean you get a pardon. That is officially recognized from the state that, hey, you did, we read for these crimes, but at the same time, doesn't mean that they're officially taking off the record. And so what clemency does allow for that is kind of a first phase of that. But what we were impressed by was the fact that they allowed the pardons. And so what we need to understand is what the clemency system does is, why it does allow for forgiveness, it doesn't allow for complete removal. And that way, what that allows is, by giving the full pardon, and that's what we especially a lot of those on the ground level, grassroots level, we're fighting for, that it does say, especially in the state of Virginia, that, hey, you can have your civil rights. You can be able to do things, be a part of the political process, be a part of the normal functioning society, without having to be told, okay, you can't have these opportunities because of past indiscretions. And so that is something that I thought was really important that the governor did. And so the way the clemency system has worked in Virginia, and this kind of goes back, of which, to the days of Reconstruction in a post-slavery and slavery world, is that what it did was it still said, well, you can have these things as far as a place to live, a place to work, but yet it was the removal of the criminal record. And that's what we need to really have removed, is the pardons, to say, okay, all things are forgiven, your acts are no longer part of the system, so now we're not going to recognize you as such. So that is what happened in the clemency system, and that's what we need more of, is these full pardons. And we don't know what will happen with the new administration, but it was important for people to understand that. Just because there's a clemency doesn't mean it has a full pardon.
That's perfect. That kind of leads us to my next question. And just so our viewers can read the full article online at www.pwperspective.com. But I wanted to go, can you talk about a new leadership? And particularly yesterday, Virginia took on a switching of power, or the transfer of power, peacefully here in Virginia from a Democrat governor to a Republican. You had opportunity, I believe, to kind of follow some of those activities and some of the new Governor Youngkin's thoughts in reference to some of his objective. Can you give your perspective on how that may impact the Black and brown community?
Well, we've already seen it happen in the first two executive orders that he signed. The first one was banning the use of terms such as critical race theory and others in schoolyards. And the second was the mask mandate now becoming optional. This is a problem. And the fact of the matter is that, and we noticed this in his speech, this is part of his campaign, was why he tried to politicize what's been going on in school boards. And that's going to be something a lot of the Republican Party will be doing, and to go into the midterms and in the 2024 elections. And a lot of it was about giving free choice. And that's something that has been a part of the GOP platform for several years now. And we all know what that basically is. It's a code for allowing those who have a better foot in society, who have a better foot in the economic footprint, in order to gain advantage. And they always use terms like parental choice. And that's no different than the dog whistles of the Southern strategy that Lee Atwater used part of the Reagan administration back in the early 80s. And so when I watched it yesterday, I watched Governor Youngkin's inaugural speech. A lot of that came to pass. He was whistling out to those of servicemen being a person of law and order. And we know that he is a privatized businessman. So a lot of services are going to be privatized. And we know what that does in the Black and brown community. It pretty much bosses us out while trying to guide under the rules of capitalism. And so this is why it's important we have to be diligent and be able to fight for things such as affordable housing. Be able to make sure that, especially in marginalized communities, that marijuana does not become, criminalized once again after all the work that Governor Northam did and some of the Democrats. And also another issue that we're about is when you're talking about with jobs, in a post-pandemic recovery, what jobs are going to be available. Child care is another issue, one of the things we heard about yesterday. And so these are some of the things that we're starting to see already that we have to be really leery of. And I always tell people, when you hear these speeches, is you always listen with third ear and watch with a third eye. Always watch for the language behind it. And so while watching some of those things, especially in terms of education and economic growth, how things becoming more privatized, it is going to be imperative that we understand, about how to grow in our own entrepreneurship spirit. How do we advance ourselves so that we can prepare ourselves, because there's going to be a lot of legislative change that's going to happen over the next several years. And we have to be ready for that. And so a lot of Black and brown communities are already feeling the pressure of, again, trying to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic recovery. And some of the things I heard in his speech yesterday, it's going to be very challenging. I'm going to be honest with you. And so this is the things we have to be alert of. And this is why we're doing some of the things we are with the PW perspective and with the PD16 perspective.
Okay, before we go on to that, I want to kind of talk about another article, and it's not in my notes, that was published yesterday on PW Perspective. And you centered around the fact that the Democrats may have, because of whether it's fear, they lost an opportunity to really beat the Republicans in this last election. And you, I think, believe, in addition to that, you also made another announcement that I want to talk about too. But do you think that as we go into the 2022 midterms election, how the Virginia vote did this year or last year is going to impact the midterms?
Well, first, I want to kind of go back to what we talked about in our article yesterday. That this was going to be the byproduct of trying to rely on, and for lack of a better term, the safety in whiteness. And we have seen this in elections all over, that there becomes a safety net in feeling that, well, white men can solve our problems. When we had two of the most progressive, this was an opportunity to make history. And being a citizen of the state of Virginia for a resident for over 30 years. Now, I moved here right when former Governor Douglas Wilder came into power. And we had an opportunity to really make an imprint in United States history by voting in the first Black woman to be governor. And I honestly would believe that if one of them, whether it was Senator McClellan or former delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy had gotten in, it would have given a refreshment. But now it reminds me a lot of 2016 when former President Donald Trump was elected. There's a general malaise in the Democratic Party. There's a lot of finger pointing. And a lot of things that need to be pointed out is, where is it going to be changed? Because, as you stated, 2020 midterms, already we're going to see this happen. If you're here in Virginia, we're seeing with the districts being split up after redistricting, the 7th, the 10th, the 33rd, and so on and so forth, that the districts have been redrawn in a way that favors Republicans. And so what needs to happen is, starting now, is for those candidates in the Democratic Party, start having a platform that includes Black women, that listens to Black women, that allows their voices to not only be heard, but to also take the lead in several issues. Like I said, childcare, education, economic recovery. These are things that need to be not only addressed, but need to be pinpointed. And if you want to get Democrats voting again, you have to have an issue that makes them angry. A lot of the reason that the Republicans won was that one of the strengths of the Youngkin campaign, I have to admit, it wasn't so much about critical race theory. It was about incubators. It was about going into these communities, into the rural parts of Virginia, that were saying, hey, we're here to listen to you. This is something Democrats have got to start doing. You can't just rely on Fairfax County, Prince William County, Richmond, and the Hampton Roads area and think that's enough. You have to go into the Roanoke. You have to go into the 434s. You have to go into Charlottesville. You have to go into the Fauquier counties and go where these people are in the rural districts and listen to their needs. And you have to be willing to address them. And so by doing that, you're showing a more broad swell of support, and that is what it's going to take. So it's going to take that candidate that can do it, that's willing to listen and willing to go into these areas and talk about their critical issues and be able to get their support.
Well, let me ask you a question in reference to that. Could you reference to the possibility of having the first Black woman as the governor of Virginia? Well, actually, the governor, a Black woman as the governor. Well, let's talk about that. Virginia did make history with the lieutenant governor as being the first Black woman as lieutenant governor. So how does that impact some of the things that you are talking about?
Well, I had an opportunity to interview Lieutenant Governor Sears prior to when she was campaigning, and one of the things that I noticed from her campaign is she, being an entrepreneur and being pro-military, that I think based on what she stands for, and just in talks I've had with people on the ground after her election campaign victory, was they feel that it's going to be a lot of echoing GOP talking points. And she's been on record as saying that, you shouldn't talk about address issues of slavery. Now, that's a long time ago. Addressing issues of parental choice. And really talk about some of the issues where she's really focused on more law and order and focusing on parental school choice by parents, which, again, falls in line with a lot of, dare I say, Trumpian talking points that really weren't emphasized. So do I think that will be an inspiration to people in Virginia? Absolutely. I mean, Lieutenant Governor Sears has made history, and I think that should be acknowledged. And what's going to be interesting, though, is will we get the issues that she's talking about? Will they be critical? Will they to be supportive, I should say, of the Black and brown communities? Or would it be, I'm going to fall in line with the GOP talking points? Will I be fall in line with their agenda? And so I do think there are people who are very happy and very proud of what Lieutenant Governor Sears has accomplished, and she was a big underdog. She came through, and however, her means can be considered somewhat questionable, but at the same time, it is historic. And what I like to see from Lieutenant Governor Sears is, will she follow through with her promise to be supportive of Black entrepreneurship, Black and brown entrepreneurship, and help with economic growth? I know that's something she's really big on, and we will see that come to pass. But at the same time, there are also concerns from people that we've talked to that says, hey, I'm worried about the law and order, because when those terms law and order come in, we know what what those pointed words are meaning. The underlying meaning is there are going to be more harsher penalties within the Black and brown communities. So there are some things that I think we should be proud of, but also things we also have to be mindful of as she goes into her position as Lieutenant Governor.
Well, that's good. There's so many more questions I want to ask you because my mind is going, but I want to stick here. We're getting close to our time here. And so I want to switch to PW Perspective publication itself. You started PW Perspective back in November 2019. What was your driving force for starting PW Perspective?
It was time for our voices to be told by our people, our stories. I had worked in political campaigns and really supported, especially here in Prince William County, a lot of minority candidates. And I had kind of heard the same thing. And for those who may know, and I've worked in media for several years, from high school to college, Atomic News, and so on and so forth, other publications, I've worked in media. So really always got to get a sense of keeping my ear to the ground, especially here in Prince William County. And when I talked with a lot of candidates, they said the same thing, like, well, we have these other publications, they are telling not only telling our stories, but they're misquoting us. And we need someone who's going to talk for us and allow us to speak. And so that really inspired me, Princess, in order to start the PW Perspective. And that's when we talk it on an anti-racist platform, because there is not a lot of anti-racist media. And that's one of the things we are proud of being here in Virginia. And so what we said was, we not only stand against anti-racist establishment, but we also are calling for change, action-oriented journalism, which has been the mission of the PW Perspective. And whether in campaigns that we've discussed or talking about the issue of dark money and politics and how they divide the Black and brown communities, or also talking about things in our educational system. Well, we've done a lot of investigative work that really we hope to just not only give them a voice, but also let people know, hey, these things are going on in Prince William County, which is a minority majority county. And so those were some of the things that we wanted to do. And most importantly was to give a voice to everyone, whether it's the Black, the Latinx, the Muslim community, LGBT plus, the minority communities who felt ignored and marginalized by mainstream media in Prince William County.
Now, you're moving or growing, I should say, this venture, this perspective to what I believe just started as a PD16 Perspective. Can you tell us what is PD16 Perspective and how that came about?
Absolutely. And so I will start with one of our followers is Pastor Gary Holland in the Stafford County area. And so what he did was he allowed us to talk about, we had conversations about this and said, hey, are you willing to talk about issues in Stafford and, issues in Caroline County, where one of my former editor of Tony Ayers of the Virginia Connection, he put something together in Caroline County talking about the Black and brown community. So after much talk and deliberation, we decided we were going to expand upon it and have a program, and thanks to LCPM Network, to become a voice in the community where we could have news that relates to the Black and brown communities from Stafford down to Caroline. So, what we thought was it'll take the PW Perspective concept of being an anti-racist voice and give it to them in a different format. This would be more of a more news-oriented format compared to our printed one. This would be more of a video-oriented one. So it'll give them the opportunity where you're a business owner, you work in education, or you're just a citizen in the community who wants to talk about issues that matter to you or the faith-based community. We invite you to be a part of the show. And that's the thing what we want to emphasize is that it's your stories and you get the voice, the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, let me ask you, what is your greatest need right now for PD16 Perspective?
People who just want to let their stories be told. We want people who, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your situation is. If it's an issue that matters to you, it matters to us. And so if you're watching this, we definitely encourage you to come on the show, talk about the issues that matter to you, because it may not be an issue that may impact Caroline County or Spotsylvania, but it matters to Stafford. It may not matter to you in Stafford, but it matters in King George. And so what we want to do, if you live in Fredericksburg, there may be an issue that matters to you. We want to hear from it because we know there are so many stories that aren't being told, that aren't being listened to by constituency, by school boards, and by Board of County supervisors that they need to hear. Whether it's police brutality, whether it's education, whether it's the economic wealth gap the divide, or it's just, hey, these issues are going on in my neighborhood. We need somebody to talk about them. So we just need you to be a part of it. Come on to the show. We definitely love to hear from you. And we're excited about what it's going to bring. And also, I want to encourage the innovators. If you have an idea, a vision that you want to bring to pass, we invite you to be a part of the show. So that's what we need more than anything, to support the community, let your stories be heard. We're giving you the platform.
Now, how do people either get in contact with you or submit story ideas?
Submit your story ideas to Reid, that's JREID, at pwperspective.com. Once again, contact me at JREID at pwperspective.com. Give us your name, give your email address, and your story idea. We definitely want to want you to come on the show. We are excited about what it is going to bring. We're looking forward for the innovators, going to be a part who's already won the sponsor of the program. And the most important thing is we need you. And so no story is too big or too small. We encourage you, come on the show, send us your email, send us your ideas. And we're looking forward to what the PD16 Perspective is going to bring to the community.
John, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to PD16 Perspective. And again, I want to thank all of you who are watching, and I want to thank all of you who are liking us. But we still need for you to like and follow us on Facebook at LCPM Community. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out at www.lcpmnetwork.com. Well, this is Princess with LCP Community, and we'll see you next time.